Yuna worked in the East Wing for 3 days without incident. She arrived at dawn, cleaned in silence, and left before the sun set. She never looked toward the Dragon Keep. She never made a sound louder than a whisper. And slowly, very slowly, she began to believe that she might survive this assignment. On the 4th day, everything changed. She was cleaning the floor near the far wall when she heard voices in the corridor. 2 servants were talking in hushed tones, their words quick and nervous. "The prince tried to approach Huaron again last night," one said. "The beast nearly took his arm off." "They say the bond is dying," the other replied. "A Valorian prince whose dragon rejects him. The shame will destroy his claim to the throne." "Good riddance. Prince Teho is as cold as space itself. Perhaps he deserves a broken bond." Their footsteps faded, and Yuna was alone again. In Valorian culture, the bond between a royal and their dragon was sacred. It was proof of their worth, their strength, their right to rule. A prince whose dragon rejected him was no prince at all. She almost felt sorry for Prince Teho. Almost. Then the lights went out. The plasma barriers that separated the cleaning chambers from the Dragon Keep flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The glowing blue walls that had protected Yuna from the beast simply vanished, leaving nothing but open darkness between her and the creature within. For one terrible moment, there was silence. Then Huaron moved. The dragon was enormous. Its body was longer than a ship, covered in scales as black as the void between stars. Its eyes burned with golden fire, and when it opened its mouth, Yuna saw fangs the size of her arm. Heat poured from its body in waves, and the air itself seemed to burn. It thrashed against its chains, roaring with a sound that shook the walls. But Yuna was too close. She tried to run, but her foot caught on her bucket, and she fell hard onto the stone floor. The dragon's tail swept past her. Its head swung around, and in the chaos, one of its great fangs caught her arm. The pain was beyond anything she had ever felt. It was not just physical. It was like fire poured directly into her blood, spreading through her body with terrible speed. She screamed, but the sound was lost in Huaron's roar. Alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Guards poured into the chamber, their weapons raised, their faces pale with fear. They surrounded the dragon, trying to force it back, trying to restore the barriers. And then Prince Teho arrived. He was tall, even for a Valorian. His silver skin was pale, almost white, and his eyes glowed like cold stars. He wore black armor that seemed to absorb her light, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never known weakness. He expected to find a corpse. Yuna could see it in his face as he looked toward the place where she had fallen. He expected blood and death and another servant to add to the count. Instead, he found her sitting against the wall, clutching her bleeding arm, very much alive. The entire chamber went silent. Star dragon venom was the deadliest substance in the known galaxy. It killed Valorians in seconds. It destroyed the strongest species in minutes. There was no cure, no treatment, no survival. Everyone knew this. It was as certain as gravity, as unchangeable as death itself. But Yuna was breathing. Her face was pale and covered in sweat. Her body shook with pain, but her heart was beating, and her eyes were open, and she was looking right at Prince Teho with an expression of pure confusion. "That is not possible," someone whispered. The prince walked toward her slowly, as if approaching something that might disappear if he moved too fast. He knelt before her and took her wounded arm in his hands. The bite was deep, and the flesh around it had turned an angry red, but it was not spreading. The venom was not killing her. "How?" he asked. His voice was soft, almost gentle, and that surprised Yuna more than anything else. "I do not know," she said. Her voice came out as a croak. Behind them, Huaron had stopped thrashing. The great dragon stood perfectly still, its golden eyes fixed on Yuna. There was no rage in those eyes now. There was something else, something that Yuna could not name, but could feel in her bones. Recognition. The beginning of something neither of them understood. "Get the High Physician," Prince Taeho commanded. "Now." Guards rushed to obey. Others restored the barriers, trapping Hwaran once more behind walls of glowing blue light. But the dragon did not fight. It simply watched Yuna with those burning eyes, and she found that she could not look away. Prince Taeho lifted her in his arms. She was too weak to protest, too confused to speak. As he carried her from the chamber, she looked back at the dragon one last time. Hwaran lowered its great head, almost like a bow. And somewhere deep in Yuna's blood, something ancient and powerful began to wake. Yuna woke in a room she did not recognize. The ceiling was high and painted with stars. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she had ever felt. Sunlight streamed through windows made of crystal, and the air smelled of flowers she could not name. For a moment, she thought she had died and gone to some strange heaven. Then the pain in her arm reminded her that she was very much alive. She tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed her back down. A Valorian stood beside her bed, wearing white robes and carrying a device that glowed with soft blue light. His face was old and lined, his silver skin darker than most, and his eyes held a kindness that Yuna had rarely seen in this palace. "Rest," he said. "I am High Physician Jinho. You have been through a great ordeal." "The dragon," Yuna whispered. "It bit me." "Yes, and you should be dead." Jinho's voice held wonder, not accusation. "Star dragon venom destroys everything it touches. I have seen warriors, nobles, and beasts fall to it in moments. Yet here you are, a small human woman, alive and healing. I do not understand. Neither did we, at first." Jinho pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down. "We have spent 2 days studying your blood, your body, your biology. What we found has changed everything we thought we knew about your species." Yuna listened as the physician explained. Humans, he said, had always been seen as weak. They had no mental powers, no natural armor, no special abilities. They lived short lives and died from things that would barely scratch a Valorian. The galaxy had looked at humanity and seen nothing of value. But they had been looking at the wrong things. Human biology, Jinho explained, was built for survival in ways that no other species could match. The human body did not resist threats. It adapted to them. It changed, evolved, and found ways to live through anything. Where a Valorian body would fight a poison and die, a human body would study that poison, learn from it, and make it part of itself. "Your immune system is a miracle," Jinho said. "It is primitive by our standards, yes, but that primitiveness is its strength. It does not know that it cannot survive, so it simply does." The dragon venom had not killed Yuna. Instead, her body had absorbed it, changed it, made it her own, and in doing so, something extraordinary had happened. "The venom has bonded with your blood," Jinho continued. "You carry Hwaran's essence within you now. In our culture, this is called a marking. It is the highest honor a dragon can give. It means that the dragon has chosen you, accepted you, claimed you as its own." Yuna stared at him. "But I am just a maid." "You were a maid. I do not know what you are now." The door opened, and Emperor Sunwoo entered the room. He was the most powerful being in the Valorian Empire, father of princes, ruler of 1,000 worlds. His presence filled the chamber like light filling a dark room. Behind him came Prince Taeho, his face unreadable as always. Yuna tried to rise, to bow, to show the respect that was expected. But the emperor raised his hand to stop her. "Do not," he said. "You are wounded, and you have earned the right to rest." He walked to her bedside and looked down at her with eyes that seemed to see everything. "High Physician Jinho has told me of your condition. A human, marked by a star dragon. This has never happened in all the centuries of our empire. Some in my court believe it is a mistake, an accident that means nothing. But I do not believe in accidents." "What do you believe, your majesty?" Yuna asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I believe that the universe is trying to tell us something, and I intend to listen." He turned to his son. "Huaran has rejected you for months. Yet this woman survives his venom and receives his mark. What do you make of this?" Prince Taeho's jaw tightened. Yuna could see the shame in his eyes, the anger at himself, and perhaps at her. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled. "I do not know, father, but I intend to find out." The emperor nodded. "See that you do. In the meantime, the woman will be moved to quarters near the East Wing. She will be given access to the Dragon Keep. Whatever connection exists between her and Huaran, I want it studied and understood." "I am just a servant," Yuna said again, because she did not know what else to say. The emperor looked at her, and something like a smile crossed his ancient face. "You were a servant, but the dragon has chosen otherwise. In our culture, the dragon's choice is law. You are something new now, something we do not have a name for yet. Perhaps you will help us find one." He left without another word. Prince Taeho remained for a moment, looking at Yuna, with those cold, glowing eyes. She could not tell if he hated her, or feared her, or something else entirely. "You have turned my world upside down," he said quietly. "I did not mean to." "I know. That is what makes it worse." He turned and walked away, leaving Yuna alone with her thoughts and her pain and the strange new power sleeping in her blood. Outside her window, the purple clouds of Atheron swirled beneath the floating palace, and somewhere in the East Wing, a dragon waited for her. 3 weeks passed, and Yuna's life became something she no longer recognized. She was no longer a maid, she was no longer invisible. The palace staff bowed to her when she walked by, and the nobles whispered behind their hands when they saw her. She had been given fine clothes and a beautiful room with windows that looked out over the clouds. She ate food that she could not name, and slept in sheets softer than water. But none of it felt real. The only thing that felt real was Huaran. She visited the dragon every day, as the emperor had commanded. The first time, she walked into the keep with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The great beast was there, chained to the floor, surrounded by barriers of glowing light. Its golden eyes found her immediately, and she froze. But Huaran did not attack. It did not roar or thrash or breathe fire. Instead, it lowered its massive head until its snout was level with her face. Hot air washed over her, carrying the smell of smoke and something sweeter, like honey burned over flame. Without thinking, Yuna reached out and touched its scales. They were warm. Not burning, just warm, like stones that had been sitting in the sun. The dragon made a sound deep in its chest, not a growl, but something softer, almost like a purr. From that day on, everything changed for Huaran. The creature that had been wild with rage became calm. It ate again. It stopped fighting its chains. The palace physicians reported that its fire burned brighter and healthier than it had in months. Whatever sickness had been destroying the dragon from within was healing. Prince Taeho watched all of this from the shadows. Yuna knew he was there. She could feel his gaze on her back whenever she visited Huaran. At first, she tried to ignore him. He was a prince, cold and distant, and she was just a human who had stumbled into something she did not understand. But slowly, he began to speak to her. "You have no fear," he said one day, watching her stroke Huaran's scales. How is that possible? Even trained handlers flinch near a star dragon. Yuna thought about the question. I was afraid at first, but Hawaran does not want to hurt me. I can feel it. Feel it how? She did not have words to explain. There was something in her blood now, something that connected her to the dragon. She knew when Hawaran was hungry or tired or sad. She knew when it wanted to be touched and when it wanted to be left alone. It was like having a second heartbeat inside her chest, a rhythm that matched her own. I do not know, she admitted. I just do. The prince was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. Hawaran was my companion since I was a child. I loved that creature more than anything in my life. And then, a year ago, everything changed. He became violent, unpredictable. He would not let me near him. I thought I had done something wrong. I thought he had stopped loving me. There was pain in his voice. Real pain, hidden behind the cold mask he always wore. Yuna realized that this proud prince was grieving for a friendship he thought he had lost. It was not your fault, she said quietly. How do you know? Because I can feel what Hawaran feels, and what I feel is not hate, it is pain. Something was hurting him long before I came here. That conversation set them on a path to discovery. Together, Yuna and Tejo began to investigate. They found records that had been hidden, servants who had been paid to look away. And finally, they found the truth. Hawaran had been poisoned. The poison was slow and cruel, designed to damage the bond between dragon and prince without killing the beast. And the person responsible was Prince Dohyun, Tejo's eldest brother, who wanted to destroy his rival's claim to the throne. He tried to take everything from me, Tejo said, his voice shaking with anger. My dragon, my honor, my future. And when the barrier failed and I was bitten, Yuna realized, that was sabotage too. Dohyun wanted to kill any witness. He did not expect me to survive. They had the truth, but they also had a problem. Prince Dohyun was powerful and dangerous. He would not let them expose his crimes without a fight. The attack came 3 nights later. Yuna woke to the sound of her door opening. A figure stood in the darkness, holding a blade that glowed with poison. She had no weapon, no way to defend herself. She was going to die. But something inside her reached out, without thought. A call, silent and desperate, through the bond she shared with Hawaran. The dragon answered. The explosion of stone and fire was deafening. Hawaran burst through the walls of the keep, free from his chains for the first time in years. His roar shook the entire palace. His flames turned the assassin to ash before the blade could fall. When the guards arrived, they found Yuna standing in the ruins of her chamber, unharmed. Hawaran was curled around her like a living shield, his great body wrapped protectively around the small human woman he had chosen. Prince Tejo pushed through the crowd and stopped at the sight. His dragon, his companion, his oldest friend, protecting someone else with a loyalty he had thought was lost forever. But he did not feel jealousy. He felt hope. The bond is not broken, Yuna said softly. It was never broken. It was just waiting. She reached out her hand to him, and after a moment, he took it. Together, they stood in Hawaran's shadow, and the great dragon rumbled with something that sounded almost like happiness. The palace was silent, but this time, the silence was not shock. It was the beginning of something new. 6 months had passed since the night Hawaran broke free to save Yuna's life. In that time, the palace had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Prince Dohyun's crimes had been exposed to the entire empire. The evidence was impossible to ignore. The poison he had used on Hawaran, the servants he had bribed, the assassin he had sent to kill an innocent woman. The emperor had stripped him of all titles and sent him into exile on the frozen moon at the edge of known space. He will have many years to think about what he has done, Emperor Sunwoo had declared. Perhaps the cold will teach him what warmth he threw away. The court had watched in silence as the disgraced prince was led away. No one spoke in his defense. No one dared. But the fall of Prince Dohyun was only the beginning of the changes. Yuna had been given a new title, Dragon Keeper. It was a position of honor, created just for her, because there was no other word for what she had become. She was not a rider or a master. She was something else, something new. A human woman who had bonded with a star dragon through blood and fire and stubborn survival. She still visited Hwaran every day, but now she walked through the palace with her head held high, and the servants who had once ignored her stopped to greet her by name. The nobles who had looked through her now looked at her with curiosity and, sometimes, respect. It was strange. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. "You will grow used to it," Mira told her one evening. They were sitting in Yuna's new chambers, drinking tea and watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of gold and pink. "Or maybe you will not. But either way, you have earned this." "I did not earn anything," Yuna said. "I just refused to die." Mira laughed. "That is the most human thing you could possibly say, and that is exactly why the dragon chose you." The poison had left his system, driven out by the healing bond he shared with Yuna. His scales shone brighter, his fire burned hotter, and his eyes held a peace that had been missing for more than a year. He was no longer a beast, driven mad by pain. He was himself again, and his bond with Prince Taeho had returned. It was not the same as before. It was better. Taeho could feel his dragon's heart once more, could speak to him through the silent language they had shared since childhood. But now there was a third voice in that connection, Yuna. The three of them were linked in a way that had never existed in Valorian history. A dual bond, unprecedented and powerful. The court did not know what to make of it. Some said it was unnatural. Others called it a miracle. But the emperor had accepted it, and so the court had no choice but to accept it too. On this particular evening, the grand throne room was filled with light and music. A celebration was being held, though Yuna was not entirely sure what they were celebrating. Her survival, perhaps, or Hwaran's recovery, or the fall of a traitor prince, maybe all three. She stood near the great windows, watching the floating islands of Atheron drift through the clouds below. She was wearing a dress of deep blue silk, the color of Earth's oceans, and her hair was decorated with small crystals that caught the light like stars. She did not feel like herself. She felt like a character in a story, someone brave and beautiful and important. But she was still Yuna, still the girl who had scrubbed floors and hidden in shadows. That part of her would never disappear, no matter how fine her clothes or how grand her title. "You look uncomfortable." She turned to find Prince Taeho standing beside her. He was dressed in formal black, his silver skin glowing softly in the candlelight. But there was a warmth in his eyes that had not been there 6 months ago. She had put it there, slowly, day by day, conversation by conversation. "I'm not used to this," she admitted. "Neither am I." He moved to stand beside her, looking out at the same view. "My whole life, I was taught that strength meant power, that worth came from what you could take, or control, or destroy. And then you appeared, a human woman with no power at all, and you survived something that should have killed you. You healed my dragon, you saved my future, and you did it all by simply refusing to give up." Yuna did not know what to say, so she said nothing. "My people called humans weak," Taeho continued. "We looked at your short lives and soft bodies and saw nothing of value. We were fools. You are not weak. You are something far more dangerous. You survive. You adapt. You endure. You take the poison that should kill you and make it part of yourself. That is not weakness. That is strength beyond anything we have ever known. We have had practice, Yuna said softly. Humans have always lived on the edge of death. We learned long ago that the only way to survive is to never stop trying. Taeho turned to face her fully. I have something to ask you. What is it? The court expects me to take a wife someday. A proper Valorian noble. Someone with power and bloodline and all the things that are supposed to matter. He paused. But I do not want that. I want a partner. Someone who will stand beside me, not behind me. Someone who will tell me when I am wrong and fight for what is right. Someone who understands that true strength is not about power. It is about choice. Yuna's heart was beating very fast. What are you asking me? Taeho reached out and took her hand. His skin was cool against hers, smooth as polished stone. I am asking if you will walk this path with me. Not as a servant or a dragon keeper. As a partner. As whatever you want to be. The throne room was filled with hundreds of people. But in that moment, Yuna felt like they were the only two beings in the universe. She thought about her father, dead in his bed of debt and despair. She thought about her mother, waiting on earth for news that might never come. She thought about the little girl she had been, dreaming of a life that seemed impossible. That little girl had never imagined anything like this. Yes, Yuna said, I will walk this path with you. In the great keep at the heart of the East Wing, Hwaran raised his head and let out a roar that echoed through the entire palace. It was not a sound of rage or pain. It was a sound of joy, of celebration, of a bond fulfilled. The court fell silent, but only for a moment. Then, slowly, the silence transformed into something else. Applause. Wonder. The beginning of a new story that would be told for generations. A human maid had been bitten by a dragon, and what happened next had changed everything. The palace floated above the purple clouds, like a dream made of glass and stone. Its towers reached toward the stars, and its walls shone with a light that never faded. This was the grand palace of the Valorian Empire, home to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And somewhere in its endless hallways, a young human woman named Yuna scrubbed the floors on her hands and knees. Yuna had worked in the palace for 2 years. She was 24 years old, with dark hair that she kept tied back, and hands that were rough from cleaning. To the Valorians who walked past her every day, she was invisible. They did not see her face or learn her name. To them, she was just another human servant, as unimportant as the dust she swept away. The Valorians were tall and beautiful, with silver skin that glowed softly, and eyes that shone like distant moons. They lived for hundreds of years, and possessed powers that humans could only dream of. They could move things with their minds and speak without words. In their eyes, humans were the lowest creatures in the galaxy. Weak, fragile, short-lived. Good only for simple work that required no thought or skill. Yuna did not argue with this. She could not afford to. Her father had died 3 years ago, leaving behind a mountain of debt. The Valorian merchants who held that debt had given her a choice: work in the palace until it was paid, or watch her mother and younger brother be taken to the labor camps. So, Yuna had come to this floating prison of crystal and cold beauty, and she had learned to be invisible. Her only friend was another human maid named Mira. They shared a tiny room in the servants' quarters, a space so small that they could touch opposite walls with their arms stretched out. At night, they would whisper to each other about home, about Earth, about the families they had left behind. On this particular morning, Yuna was called to the head steward's office. His name was Sojin, and he was a Valorian of middle rank, who managed all the palace servants. He looked at Yuna the way one might look at a tool that was about to break. There is a staffing problem. Sojin said. His voice was flat and cold. 3 servants have died this week. We need someone to clean the East Wing. Yuna felt her heart go still. Everyone knew about the East Wing. It was where Prince Taeho lived, the 3rd son of the Emperor. But more importantly, it was where he kept his dragon. The Dragon Keep, Yuna said quietly. You want me to clean near the Dragon Keep? Sojin's glowing eyes narrowed. Is there a problem? There were many problems. The dragon, Hwaran, was a star dragon, a creature of black scales and fire that burned hotter than suns. It had killed 3 servants already this month. No one who went near it came back whole. But Yuna also knew that refusing an order meant instant termination, and termination meant the labor camps for her family. No, she said. There is no problem. That night, Mira grabbed her arm with shaking hands. You cannot go there, she whispered. Hwaran has gone mad. Even Prince Taeho cannot control it anymore. They say the bond between them is breaking. The beast attacks anyone who comes close. I have no choice, Yuna replied. Then at least be careful. Stay near the walls. Do not look at it directly. And if it moves toward you, run. Do not try to be brave. Just run. Yuna nodded, but they both knew the truth. If Hwaran decided to attack, running would not save her. Nothing would. She did not sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about her mother's face and her brother's laugh. She thought about the small house they had lived in on Earth, with its leaking roof and creaking floors. It had been poor and worn, but it had been home. This palace, for all its beauty, would never be home. It was a cage with pretty bars. When dawn came, Yuna gathered her cleaning supplies, a bucket, a brush, clean cloths, simple tools for simple work. She walked through the waking palace, past servants who did not meet her eyes, and guards who did not see her at all. The East Wing was different from the rest of the palace. The walls here were darker, made of black stone instead of crystal. The air was warmer, and there was a smell like burning metal. Yuna's footsteps echoed in the empty hallways, and she felt very small and very alone. She found the chambers she was meant to clean, a series of rooms near the Dragon Keep. Through the far wall, she could hear something breathing. It was a deep, rumbling sound, like thunder that never stopped. The sound of something massive and ancient and dangerous. Yuna set down her bucket and began to work. She kept her head down and her movements quiet. She told herself that if she was invisible enough, even a dragon might not notice her. But as she scrubbed the floor, she felt something change in the air. The rumbling breath grew louder, closer, and beneath it she heard another sound, a low growl that made her bones shake. The dragon knew she was there. Yuna kept her eyes on the floor and tried to remember how to breathe. In the distance, something massive shifted in the darkness, and the whole palace seemed to hold its breath along with her.